Hey guys, how's it going? This is a beautiful area I'm in right now. It's a brand new area to me that I've not photographed in before, and it's just gorgeous. A couple of months ago, I had the opportunity to sit down with Kirby from the Photographing the West podcast. Great podcast, go check it out. I'll put a link to it in the description below. Kirby covers just a huge selection of different topics, different things like that. He's a super nice guy, super fun to chat with. So again, I'll put a link to that podcast in the description below. Go check it out. Anyways, in my conversation with Kirby, we sat down and we discussed the use of a floating blind for wildlife photography. And if you followed my channel for a while now, this is something you're familiar with already. This is something that I use quite often, and I've uploaded quite a few videos using this floating blind to photograph a variety of species. But I realized the other day that in all my videos that I've talked about that floating blind or used the floating blind, I've never gone into detail about how I select the locations that I do to photograph. So in this week's video, I wanted to take you along with me as I explore this new area and kind of detail out for you what I'm doing in order to ensure that this is going to be hopefully a good spot for me to set up here and photograph in tomorrow morning. So come along with me as we kind of explore this spot, and I'll go over a variety of different things that I'm looking for in particular as we're setting up here tonight. So the first thing that I always like to check for when scouting out a new area is it's obviously got to have some birds to photograph. I've been out in this area most of the day today, and pretty much all day I've just seen tons of birds out here. There's constantly birds flying in and out, and there's just a lot of birds in the area. There's been a lot of mallards, I've seen some goldeneyes, some green-winged teals, there's a bunch of harriers flying around, and a bunch of other gulls. I see a eagle actually flying out just right now. So there's a lot of birds in this area, and if I have the time, if I've got multiple days to do scouting, what I like to do is come out a couple days in a row to ensure that it's not just some random fluke that there's a bunch of birds here today when they might not be here tomorrow. I just like to establish some consistency to make sure that the birds are here on a normal basis. So that's the first thing that I always like to figure out is, are there going to be birds here? You know, there's enough out here today, and different species too, where I'm pretty confident that they're here pretty regularly, so I feel good about this. Another thing that I like to keep in mind when scouting out these areas is you need to make sure it's legal for you to set up a floating blind out here. These floating blinds, you have to check in the regulations with whatever agency manages the area you're looking to set up in. They generally treat floating blinds the same as you would a boat. So some national parks or state parks or wildlife preserves, different things like that, they've got different regulations that'll tell you if you can even use a floating blind out here. Some places you can't at all. Others you can with a permit. Others you can during certain times of the year only. So just make sure you're doing your research in if you can actually set up your blind here. Another thing to consider too is if you've got private property or something that you're dealing with, just make sure you're talking with the landowner first and getting permission from them, obviously. Another thing that I like to consider, you know, how much human traffic is there through this area? Are there a lot of people walking through that are going to scare the birds? Are there boaters out here that are going to scare the birds? Like I mentioned, I've been out here the majority of the day today. I haven't seen anybody walk through yet. I've seen some footprints off a ways, but I haven't actually seen anybody walk through yet. And I've got one boater like way down here, and he hasn't come through the area where the birds are. So I'm fairly confident that this is just a pretty quiet area, and it's going to be a good area for me to get pictures. So you know, just do your research, make sure you're figuring all these things out before you come out and set up. It would be a real pain to go through everything, get it all set up. You know, it's starting to get light. and people come through, scare the birds off, and the sheriff shows up and gives you a ticket because you're not supposed to be here. So just do your research in whether or not you can actually be out here and whether or not it's a good spot to be. I've got some other items that I wanted to cover with you guys as well that have to do more with the actual water that you're setting up in, as well as where to set up the blind, different things like that. So let me go get my waders on and grab the blind. We'll start setting it up, and I'll cover these other points with you as I set it up. Ooh, that's deeper than I thought. Okay, I've stopped sinking. All right, so something else I always try to check when I can is how deep the water is. There's a couple of reasons why this is important. First being, I've gone out a couple times before and I've only had like a couple of inches of water to work with, and that floating blind has a hard time floating in just a couple inches of water and being able to move it around and all that. Also, where it's a blind where you stand in the middle, just imagine it around me here, and I'm able to move around in the water in just a couple inches of water. I can't do that. I'm literally crawling along, and those outings, you know, I've had some great experiences on those outings, but overall it's just a lot more exhausting and tiring trying to move that blind around. So that's one thing to consider if the water's too shallow. The other thing, if the water's too deep, like I know the further out into the middle of this river I get, it's gonna get deeper and deeper. If I'm up to my neck in freezing cold water, it's not gonna be very fun. It's gonna flood my waders and I'm gonna get hypothermia, so I'd rather not have that happen. So I like a good depth. This is a great depth right here, about to my waist or so. If it was a little bit higher, that would be fine. A little bit lower, that's fine. But this is a good depth right here. And I'll be able to, you know, set the blind up and be pretty comfortable in here tomorrow. So there's some other things that I try to consider when I set this up. So I've got some birds. They're still ways off, but they're starting to come in. So I'm gonna get the blind in the water, get it set up, and just kind of leave it here so the birds can get used to it. And while I'm setting it up, I'll talk about the other points that I consider when setting this thing up and using it. All right, there we have it. I just ended up setting it up on land up here. I thought that would be easier than trying to do it in the water. If you are interested on seeing how this is built and how I set it up, I'll put a link to another video in the description below, and I'll show you in that video exactly how I made it and how it works and everything. I'm going to throw my ghillie net over it just for a little added camouflage. I'll probably weave some of these reeds into it as well. That's another thing to consider with the birds out here. I don't know how skittish they are. I've never used this blind around them before, so I don't know how skittish they're going to be around it. So I want to camouflage it as... Got some ducks flying by right here. I want to camouflage it as well as I possibly can. The other things to consider when setting this up is which way am I going to be using it to photograph in the morning. The sun's going to come up back here, and so I want to be facing this way just to get good light, unless you're doing some backlight or something like that. But that's another thing to consider is the spot that you're setting it up going to be a good spot in the morning with the light coming in and everything like that. Another thing to consider, how long is it going to take you to get here in the morning? You want to be in this blind before it's light, before the birds start coming in. If they see me get into this blind, they're going to be very wary of it and they're not going to come by. So I want to, as I leave here tonight, I'm going to time how long it takes me to get from this point that I'm in now to walk back to my vehicle, to drive home, and I'll add like 10-15 minutes onto that time for my time to get ready in the morning or whatever. That way I can know what time I need to wake up and leave home in the morning. But those are just some things that you want to consider when you use one of these blinds. It's a fantastic way of photographing wildlife, and I'm really hoping this spot pays off tomorrow morning. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to anchor this somewhere just so it doesn't float away tonight, and then early tomorrow morning I'll be in this blind and hopefully be getting some fun pictures of some wildlife. So we'll see you in the morning. I hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions on, again, how I choose these locations to photograph, how I set this up, anything like that, just let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. But yeah, without anything else, without more of my rambling, I'm gonna get going, and we'll see you first thing in the morning. Hey guys, good morning. What an amazing morning this was. I came out here early, just after 5 o'clock, got in the blind, got into position, and just waited. And I'll be honest, at first I was starting to second guess myself because, I was waiting there for an hour and 15 minutes, and usually I can hear birds start to come in around that time. I didn't hear anything. And it was starting to get light a little bit where I could see. I couldn't see anything. So I was starting to get really worried that maybe it was just a fluke yesterday that there were birds here. But, I gave it a little bit more time and just waited. And like all at once, all these birds just came in. It started with the goldeneyes. I had a bunch of goldeneyes come in. And I was able to get some pretty fun video and pictures of them. And then I had a bunch of Gadwalls come in, and those are just gorgeous birds as well. And then a bunch of Wigeons came in. Again, beautiful, beautiful birds. Let's see what else. I had the green-winged teals come in. There were a couple pelicans just kind of chilling. And then a harrier came in, a northern harrier came in, and started harrying the birds. Let's see what I did there. And that was kind of cool to watch. Oh, and the best part is I had what I believe was a bufflehead. I need to double check, but I think it was a bufflehead, and he was a little ways away. And those are just beautiful birds that I've been wanting to photograph for quite a while now. But again, he was a ways away, so I didn't really get anything. And I'm like 90% sure that's what it was, but he was still pretty far away. But you know what that means? If I've got one of those in the area, I'll definitely be coming back out to try to get him, because I've been wanting to photograph one for quite some time now. But it's just been an amazing morning. I'm so glad that I set up here yesterday. I'm glad that I did the research and the scouting to find the spot to set up in. It was definitely worth it. Paid off big time. Just had so much fun out here today. As always, you guys, if you have any questions regarding floating blinds, photography, gear that I use, any of that stuff, just let me know down in the comments, or send me an email, whatever works best for you guys. I'm always happy to answer whatever questions you guys have. But I'm chilled to the bone. I've been in this river for almost 6 hours now, so I'm headed back. I'm gonna get out, get warm, and go through all those pictures that I took. I almost filled 2 memory cards, so I'm pumped. I love this spot. It's probably my new favorite spot. But yeah, thanks for following along this week, you guys. We'll see you next time. Get out. Ah, help me. I can't get out.